And so according to Lewis, and I don't know where he's getting his information from, so I'm just going to preface what I'm saying here as saying this information comes directly from Avi Lewis. I do have some respect for Avi Lewis. He comes from a terrific family, the Lewis family. His grandfather, David Lewis, was also the leader of the NDP a couple of decades ago, and his father, Stephen Lewis, who sadly just passed away, I think the day after Avi Lewis was elected leader of the NDP. Stephen Lewis was the leader of the NDP here in the province of Ontario before he trotted off when he was selected to be the Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, I believe. So, I mean, a pretty respectful family resume there. And so, according to Lewis, if you see me looking over here, I'm working on I got all my stuff on my laptop here, so I don't want you to think I'm taking all this off the top of my head, okay? I'm cheating. I don't know why I'm looking over there when I should be looking here, but here I am. So anyways, according to Avi Lewis, there's going to be a startup cost of about $350 million to get this thing up and running and off the ground. And then following that, there's probably going to be maintaining or maintenance costs of about $300 million a year. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is. For perspective, you can compare it to the defense budget of this country right now. And so that $300 million per year represents roughly about 0.5% of our current defense budget. And I want to say to you that that's the current defense budget, not the enhanced one that's being implemented right now. The Canadian government is spending way more money on defense than they ever did at the moment. But I'm talking about, like, my numbers are based upon what the government was spending on defense prior to the increases. So, as I said, this venture of publicly subsidized grocery stores would come in at about 0.5% of the defense budget, okay, for perspective. The whole idea, the whole concept would be modeled on the the retail warehouse concept, sort of made famous by Costco, where you've got that high volume, there's not an awful lot of money put into aesthetics and the beauty of the store and that experience. It's almost like no frills sort of concept, in that the money isn't being spent on the atmosphere. Instead, that money is going towards the reduction of costs of the groceries and the products on offer or available in that store. So the Costco model is the one that's being looked at. And of course, the difference is, because it's publicly subsidized, you're going to have things like publicly subsidized rent. You're going to have publicly subsidized utilities, maybe the whole, like I said, the startup costs. You got to build these places, right? And I mean, in the early going, it's not like we're going to build them in their hundreds or their thousands. We're probably looking nationally, maybe 50 stores. And you can laugh at me and say, well, what the hell good is 50 stores going to do across Canada? Well, it might do some good if you live anywhere around one. That's what I'm saying. So for those people, their grocery bills will be a lot better. So laugh at me all you want, but there are some happy people out there who would benefit by following the concept that I'm advocating here for. So this whole thing, of course, isn't a standalone. I mean, like, if you're going to do some strategic thinking in the planning of this, then you might want to make sure that you have networks, local networks, food storage and distribution networks, relatively locally placed. You want to have synergies. You want to develop relationships with the local agricultural community to better streamline, the arrival of their goods or their products into your store. That's not perfect in areas where there's not a big agricultural footprint. But again, this idea isn't perfection. We do what we can. We do the best that we can where we can. And so, just because we're not making universal positive change in every single community and every single neighborhood across the country doesn't mean that we're still not making positive change. And so we do this incrementally, and we do it one step at a time. And we're going to try and take advantage of the local agricultural industry wherever that's possible to do so. That's just being smart. So the idea behind this, well, what would be the impact of all of this if it actually worked? Okay, so according to Lewis, you can expect discounts or cuts or whatever. You can expect to save 30 to 40% on your grocery bill. And so that sounds like a lot, and it is. But that's just an idea. That's just an indication of the degree to which you have been cheated for so long. That's how much they've been taking out of your pocket and putting into theirs. If you thought your wallet was feeling a little light, you're right, it is. That's because these guys have it, and they take it from you every week. Okay, every single week you pad their fortune with markups of 30 or 40%. And so, let's take a look at what this might mean for an average Canadian family. So, I asked my research assistant, I don't want to say her name out loud because she'll start talking to me, but she comes out of my little Echo device. And I asked her what the average Canadian family of four approximately spends on groceries a week. And she came back with $350, although she said that could balloon to $500 in many cases per week. Now, of course, that's available to that thing that's on my desk over there. So hardly, I'm not saying it's the most scientific thing, but it's getting its information from the internet, which is where I would be getting it if I was researching it myself. And so I'm just going to use these numbers to begin. So that's fine. That's the average Canadian family, whoever they are. So I talked to somebody in town here in Renfrew. So that's a family of 6 that I'm speaking of. And that person that I was speaking to indicated to me that they spend about $325 a week on groceries. Mind you, they supplement that by purchasing things at places like Giant Tiger, who also offer a small selection of groceries themselves. Or even going to places like the dollar store where you can pick up like dry groceries, like cans and soups and those sorts of things. So, whatever they're spending on those stores, I'm going to count that towards their grocery bill if it's on food, if they're spending stuff on food. And so basically what that means to me is that they're spending in excess of $325 a week on groceries. So if I take that 40% savings that I was talking about, which would be the high end, admittedly, that's the high end, and I apply that to that $325 grocery purchase per week, my goodness, that's a savings of $130 a week. That's turning a $325 a week grocery bill into a $190 a week grocery bill. Laugh at that. Go ahead and laugh at that, because that looks pretty good to me. You extrapolate that for a full month, and you're talking about, what are we talking about here? At 40%, that's a savings of $520 a month. If I take that 30% discount figure, then that represents a savings of $97.50 a week. When you extrapolate that over the course of a month, that turns out to be $390 savings on your groceries per month. Now, if I take the average 30%, 40%, so I'm going to take 35%, we're looking at $455 a month that you're saving. My goodness, that's a car payment for most people, okay? And you're throwing it away. You're making rich guys even richer. And so what does it matter? Why is there an ideological problem with buying your groceries from a publicly funded grocery store? What's the difficulty there? What's your problem? $455 a month wouldn't look better somewhere else in your life. Instead, you're going to hand it over to Metro, or you're going to hand it over to Loblaws. I mean, those people are doing just fine the way that they are. And if we don't do anything about it, they're going to be doing even better while we go in the other direction and do even more poorly. So some of the arguments you can anticipate with respect to, how people are going to react to this. You get the corporate capitalist types, that 1% type. This is communism. This smacks of socialism, as if those are dirty words. This is about making sure that all people, are looked after in our society. It's what we're called upon to do if we're Christians, or really in any of the other faiths of the people who walk this planet. Okay, it's what we're called to do. All right. So your money isn't the most important thing in our lives. We should all have somewhat of an even chance of getting the resources that our society has to offer, and that applies to food too. And here's my view on the whole thing, okay? To all the people who are out there who feel that government doesn't have much of a role to play in the lives of its citizens, that it should just get the hell out of the way of everyone and let everyone lead their or live their lives. Sorry, I don't agree with that at all, and I don't think that's the correct attitude to have. I don't even think that's anywhere near. I don't think there's even a nuanced argument to be made that can support that kind of thing. If government isn't here to protect, enhance, and provide for the lives of its citizens, then what in the hell is it here for? I mean, these people are all taxpayers. We pay taxes so that we have services, okay? We have a right to these things because we buy into it, all right? Government does have a role to play in the lives of Canadians. That's what good government does, all right? Only a rich person would think otherwise. So, another thing about this whole idea is that it will create some jobs. And again, here comes some more corporate eye rolling. Here we go. What kind of jobs? Union jobs, the kind of jobs that pay living wages, fair wages, and that don't allow companies to roll over their employees and take advantage of them. All right, that kind of thing. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with people having jobs that pay them a living wage? Honestly. So we've got the added benefit of that we've got jobs created out of this. So the more stores, the more jobs, and they're good paying jobs. And you know what people with good paying jobs do? They spend their money. Also, they pay taxes, more taxes. Yeah, this really works. Okay. So anyways, I'm not here to advocate about job creation and how it could be done. I'm here to advocate about better prices for our groceries, okay? And so one of the ways that I'm going to advocate for this, outside of boycotting grocery stores, that's another article, I think that appeared yesterday on my site, rather than just simply a boycott, there are other things we can do. And public grocery stores, publicly funded, publicly subsidized, government-backed and supported grocery stores is not, or are not, they're not the worst thing ever proposed, okay? If I can save the average Canadian, hardworking average Canadian family hundreds of dollars a month on their grocery bills, then I figure I'm doing something positive for the world. Hey, I'm Steve Jones.